Donald Trump and Elon Musk went on Sean Hannity. I mean, they're sitting together like, you know, the footage of like Princess Diana and Prince Charles are announcing their engagement. They seem like buddies. Like, I legitimately, not to psychoanalyze these freaks, but like Elon Musk's father has repeatedly said publicly, I'm not proud of my son. And Elon has to buy guys to be a top video game player. And now he gets to buy a daddy who approves of him finally, right?
I love him. He's my friend.
I love him. I love him very much, as much as a straight man can love another man. He did tweet that. And he only costs like 300 million plus to do it. He can buy. When you're a billionaire, you can even buy your own father. So it's just a bizarre set of circumstances to see Trump sitting alongside the world's richest man and being open about the fact that he's making major decisions in our supposed democracy.
Well, you see a little bit of Trump's deficiencies too, in that Musk, for all of his faults, and he is just like, you know, buying a privatized space program and that sort of things. He's an actual capitalist, whereas Trump is a scammer and real estate guy. Yeah.
Although those are not two entirely separate silos.
Of course not. But Trump would love to have, like, you know, Starlink.
He would have loved to be like a scam artist, but with all of the kind of technological elements that mystify him, right? That he can't fully understand. Throughout
Trump stakes.
You see how he's like, he's really, at one point in the interview, maybe we'll play it later, Elon Musk talks about how Neuralink is going to, you know, solve all of these like paralysis and disease. And Trump is like, he's a brilliant guy. Trump is not, you know, he really is a child in the way that he loves like big explosions and sports and athletes and like Hollywood and television. And he is totally fooled by the like Theranos space move fast and break things BS that Elon Musk spews.
You see why like the Rogan or Lex Fridman style of being insanely naive about all this stuff is really popular, because it goes to the top. And
why, you know, it'll go away because everyone will, I think, eventually realize it's a scam, but it's future focused at the very least. And I think that's in many ways where the Democrats have been lacking as the party of institutional maintenance. It outsources all of the kind of lofty ideas about the future to a bunch of tech charlatans like Elon Musk, who say we're going to colonize Mars, as if that's really going to happen. But of the reporting on this topic, I guess, or the transcripts or the write-ups this morning from the papers about this interview, the Department of Education stuff hasn't gotten as much coverage. This is one of the answers in this interview that was I wanted to highlight and debunk a bit.
Go to an area that I think is key, and you talked about this in recent interviews, and that is we don't need a Department of Education. Okay, and what some people are trying to do is stoke fears that, oh my gosh, my kid's not going to get the money for education, or grandma's Social Security and Medicare. This was a big promise of yours on the campaign trail. So I really want to give you both an opportunity to assure the American people you will keep, the money will be allocated for students, but with higher standards, for example, I would assume associated with monies given or vouchers.
So much, and then Elon goes, but look, Social Security won't be touched, other than if there's fraud or something, we're going to find it's going to be strengthened, but fraud won't be touched. Medicare, Medicaid, none of that stuff is going to be touched.
Nothing.
Pause it. Okay, we're getting to the Department of Education stuff in a second. But that's news to the House Republicans and the Senate Republicans, who are currently negotiating in almost entirely, entire defunding of Medicaid.
Fraud is like the immigrant crime of these sort of benefits. Like there's no actual. They're
claiming there's $1 trillion in fraud, and there's no evidence.
But they're actually going after the whole enchilada.
Yeah.
And the issues they're going to have with how much they want to cut is that they will not be able to cut. The House bill will not be able to cut nearly as much as it may want without going into mandatory spending. Like, it's literally not possible.
Mathematically impossible, and mandatory spending includes Medicaid.
Right, and especially as Majority Leader John Thune has said, too, if they want to make the Trump tax cuts permanent, they're going to need even more money to find it elsewhere to offset those tax cuts.
Right.
So, like, this is going to put them in a very, very, very bad bind of what they've said that they're going to do relative to what Trump is saying that they're going to do.
Both the Senate bill and the House bill are centered around gutting Medicaid, and Trump is saying publicly that they're not going to. So
it looks like the whole thing is fraud. Whoops.
But these negotiations are going to be a fascinating display, and again, the margins in the House are historically slim. And as I said in headlines, Trump's disapproval has gone up 10 points in less than a month.
And I don't know if I think it probably does need to be said to certain Democrats. How could you negotiate with this administration, which is deciding all of your negotiations are bunk and could just be turned over to Elon and the most servile 20-year-olds you can find?
The Republican senators are panicking because they are the ones that allocated the funds that are supposed to go to their constituents. They get goodies in these bills, and even the Republicans have to answer in some way to their constituents.
Red states have research universities.
Yeah, like Alabama, we highlighted that. And so they're starting to get a little freaked out right now about their own butts, but it'll be fascinating to see how this goes regarding Medicaid.
Won't be touched. Medicare, Medicaid, none of that stuff is going to be touched.
Nothing.
You don't have to. Now, if there are illegal migrants in the system, we're going to get them out of the system and all of that fraud. But it's not going to be touched. School. I want to bring school back to the states so that Iowa, Indiana, all these places, Idaho, New Hampshire, there's so many places, the states, I figure 35 really run well. And right now, it's Norway, Sweden, Denmark, Finland, China. China, can you imagine, has top schools. We're last. So they have a list of 40 countries. We're number 40. Usually we're 38, 39. The last time we were number 40. And what I say is you got to give it back. So it doesn't work. I'll tell you what we're number one in, cost per pupil. We spend more money than any other country by far. It's not even close per pupil. Okay. So we know it doesn't work. So we spend the most and we have the worst, right? The worst result. When we get
okay, I'm sorry. So education, we do not spend the most. All of the Nordic countries that he lists there, whether it's Denmark or Finland.
Charter schools?
Almost entirely public schools.
Oh, that was my second guess.
Oh, there you go. You hit it on the second try. And for example, in Finland, sometimes they tax people up to 68%. A lot of folks. I think it's, I'm looking at this now, so forgive me, but it's significantly higher than what we have in the United States. At the very least in this current moment. It would have been comparable in the 60s to what Finland does or Denmark.
We have bad outcomes because we don't spread around the wealth and have a massively public, basically the same reason we don't have good health outcomes.
Right.
Is this should all be centralized and it shouldn't be based on how rich your zip code is.
Yes. So he's saying that we're the best, but we're also the worst. And we're going to cut funding for education to make us the best.
Get the illegals out.
Like the top education systems in the world, which tax people way more to fund their public education system. Okay.
Spend the most and we have the worst, right? The worst result. When we give that back to Indiana, when we give that back to Iowa and back to a lot of the states that run well, they run well. There's a lot of them, 35, 37, 38. Now you're going to have 10 laggards, but you're going to have
okay. So this is what kills me. So he lists the 37th, 38th, 39th ranked education states in the country, I guess, right? And says, they're doing pretty well. Relative to the other states, they're actually not. The top ranked education systems in this country are New Jersey, New Hampshire, Connecticut, Vermont, Massachusetts, New York, Maine, Colorado, Pennsylvania, West Virginia. Bottom, Arizona, Louisiana, Nevada, New Mexico, Alabama, South Carolina, Oklahoma, North Carolina, Florida, Tennessee. Well, at least according to this website, but I've seen worse for things like, Alabama, or Alabama was on there, but Mississippi, et cetera. There's no debate, and it's been this way my entire life, that red states have worse education outcomes than the blue states. And so he can't pick the states that he wants to. So he's picking kind of the ones in the middle around, I don't know, the 40th percentile.
37, 38. Now you're going to have 10 laggards, but you're going to have 5 real laggards. But that's going to be okay. Take New York. You give it to Westchester County. You give it to Suffolk County. You give it to upstate New York. And you give it to Manhattan. But you give it to 4 or 5 subsections. Same thing in California. Los Angeles is going to be a problem, but you're going to give it to places that run well. We can change education. Now, school choice is important, but that
ding, ding, ding.
will get taken care of automatically. We want to bring education back to the states.
To the profiteers.
You will spend half the number, and I'm not even doing this. I'm not even doing this to save, but you will save. It costs you much less money. You get a much better education. If you go to some of these states, you'll be the equivalent of Norway, Sweden, Denmark, places that really have a good school system.
Fund education?
Those places will be the equivalent. And your overall numbers will get so much better.
Do you want standards?
Okay. Lots of gobbledygook, but the reality, and it's difficult to even discern what he's saying. I mean, he is just such a lunatic and has degraded significantly since 2016. The federal government accounts for around 13 to 14% of money that goes to public schools. But that's not 13 to 14% in every school district. If he's talking about Westchester County or some of the richest areas of New York or other blue states, it is very likely that they get 0% federal funding in some of those instances. It can be anywhere from 0% to up to 75% of the school funding. And you know where that high end number is? Poor areas, rural areas, areas that have children with disabilities, which is the DEI element, the DEIA, as Sam has kept pointing out. They leave out the accessibility piece because they want to obscure the fact that they're cutting funding for children with disabilities. But the federal government goes in and fills in the gaps in poorer areas where property taxes can't properly fund their education system. So the richest areas are already set with funding their public education with property taxes. I mean, the fact that he brings up Westchester County, I know this because I know people that live in Scarsdale. They go there knowing that they're going to pay high property taxes because of the school system. And what he's trying to do, and Elon Musk are trying to do, is gut the stuff that bridges the gap for the poorest people in our country. And frankly, this is about red states even more than blue states, as I just laid out.
Those two guys right there are literally the culprits for all of this. They're like as a symbol. They should be taxed way higher, and instead of giving all that money to play with and buy more hotels or play with spy satellites and all this sort of stuff, and buy company towns in Texas, that money should be going into schools to educate people so they aren't like dazzled by grok and whatever BS that these charlatans are pointing out to people. They have the money that should be going into these schools. It's not like they can't make it more efficient. What they mean by efficient is less money to teachers who, by the way, spend money in your community, and more money to guys like them who jet around the world, like Elon, getting huge contracts for stuff from the government.
Hey folks, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and check out our daily show. We do it every day at 12 p.m. Eastern for about 2.5 hours. We even take phone calls. You should check that out.